My earliest memory is 1995.
They would love a base hit into the gap, and they could.
I'm sitting there with my dad. It's past my bedtime. Edgar's at the bat.
Martinez swung on the line down the left field line for a base hit. Here comes Joy.
Hits a double down the line, and we're screaming in the living room, celebrating that the Mariners are going to the playoffs.
The Mariners are going to play for the American League Championship.
I remember sitting with my grandma. She said, "Sonny, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Grandma, I want to be a baseball player." She said, "Well, you know, that's a hard dream. Like, what else would you want to be?" I said, "No, Grandma, I want to be a baseball player." I think that playing the game of baseball really changes the way you grow up because it's a community. My family was always at the game. We were always so excited to go. I make my varsity team as a junior, and I get invited to this thing called the Area Code Games. We're in California. We looked at it as just a vacation, and we get to do this in the meantime. We're walking out of the tunnel, and I'm looking in the stands, and there are literally thousands of scouts, radar guns, stopwatches all over the place. And I've never seen anything like this. And I went and asked the coach, I'm like, "Why am I not in the lineup?" And he said to me, "You know, I got 1 through 9, I don't want to play you." And I told him flat out, I said, "That's a mistake." He comes back to me a couple minutes later, he goes, "You're in luck, kid, we actually have to hit 10. You're gonna hit 10. And I said, "Okay." A guy named Rick Porcello was on the mound. Rick Porcello went 1 through 9 and punched out 9 guys. So I go up there, and he throws me like a first pitch fastball at like 94. And I just remember stepping out of the box going like, that's a little bit different than what I've seen in my high school career. Next pitch, same thing, 94, and I hit a double in the gap. I remember looking up at second base into the crowd thinking like, what just happened? I'm walking out with my parents, and my dad is so excited, you know, in this moment, and my mom, and Doug McMillan, the scout for the Washington Nationals, puts his arm around my father, and he turns to him, he says, "Your son is one heck of a player." He says, "I'm gonna draft him in the 2nd round." And I remember going back home with my parents and thinking like, what does that even mean? I'm gonna play professional baseball? That dream that you thought about when you were 6 years old, you begin to doubt it when it becomes more real, which is the craziest thing to think about. You know, the draft comes and the Nationals call, and they took us at 100. To be there with my family and my friends, it's probably one of the coolest moments of my life. I went into the minor leagues optimistic. You've got to figure out how to survive as an 18-year-old kid on your own in the middle of Melbourne, Florida, in an underdeveloped city. There's no FaceTime, right? And staying at the La Quinta Inn, right? Like, nobody gives you a script to handle this. 2010, I made the All-Star team, but I had done something leading up to the All-Star game that was eating away at me. And I had taken a prescription drug, Ritalin. I was leading the league in almost everything at that point. And by the time I got to the All-Star game, my numbers did not look like an All-Star. That's how bad it kind of dropped off. And I just went into this massive depression. Didn't want to talk to anyone. Didn't want to be around anyone. I didn't even like the game of baseball. My family's embarrassed now. I have to get bigger, stronger, faster, and be the best player so I can basically overshadow this as much as I can. And the only way that it's going to be forgotten is if I absolutely dominate everything, everywhere. If anybody stood in my way, I was going to remove them. I was going to let them know that this was my world. This is what I did. And that identity just led me down a trail of despair and broken relationships and a fractured worldview. If my average was low, my identity was low. If my average was up, I was the man. The lie I was believing was that nobody wants to know anything about you. They just want to see you play baseball. I can vividly remember walking into the clubhouse with headphones on my head and didn't take them off all day in the midst of this depression, trying to find a sense of worth and a sense of joy or happiness somewhere, anywhere. You'll take it anywhere you can get it, honestly, at that point. It's so bad. And in 2011, in September of that year, I quit baseball. It was just this huge dark cloud on me as I'm standing in the outfield. And I'm kind of venting to some guys. I don't really want to be here anymore. And I'm just kind of swinging half effort. And the manager says, get out of the cage. And I get in an argument with him, and I said, I'm not getting out of the cage, like I'm working on something. And he looks me in the face and he says, go get your stuff, go sit in the stands and watch the game. And I look him back in the eye and I said, I'll do you one better, I'll get my stuff, and I'm driving home. I feel absolutely lost, and I just don't know who I am. Up until this point, it's just always been sports and baseball. And so I came home and just kind of spiraled into these consecutive bad decisions. Nobody really wants to be alone in those moments. Like, I didn't really want to be alone. I wanted someone to grab me out of there, but I needed a direction. I didn't just need a smack on the butt and say, hey, it's gonna be okay. I needed a real direction and identity and a place to go. I think people lie and say that, you don't need friends, but you need people around you in these moments.
My name is Brent Lillibridge, former Major League Baseball player. When you're a professional athlete, it's really about you, right? It's my job to take care of what I need to do and get my swings and all that stuff, and I just felt gravitated to do something for somebody else. Steven, I just really enjoyed him. I think he was super funny. Incredible athlete. Honestly, just the physicality of him alone. Can hit a ball a mile, can throw a ball a mile. Not straight, but a mile. I was playing the Mariners. I looked in the stands and there's him smiling. And I was like, what the heck are you doing here? It's baseball season. There should be no Steven Souza in the stands. We're gonna talk.
What Brent did in that moment was just love me. He showed up over and over again, and he asked questions, and he built relationships, and he invited me to things, and he welcomed me into his own family. They just let me sit on their couch and talk with them.
It was never like me and my wife were sitting around the table praying for Steven Souza's soul. It just naturally happened where, hey, you want to come over and hang out?
Having somebody just sit on the couch and just ask me questions and listen, and then me in turn ask him questions. He's a subtle hero. That's what Brent is.
The opportunity to invite and walk through this stuff with him is one of my biggest joys in my life.
I'm very hard-headed and very stubborn and very driven in things, and so it takes these dramatic moments sometimes in my life to really capture my attention. And I think that's exactly what God was doing right there, was taking it from me, giving me a choice bluntly on where I was going to go and who I was really called to be. There was something that happened in that moment in my soul that transitioned into the way that I looked at the world and looked at people from that point on. And I remember calling my farm director back and saying, I'd love to come back and I'd love a second chance here. And he said, Steven, you're not a bad kid. You've just made some bad choices. There's going to be some consequences, but we'd love to have you back. I'll never forget that conversation.
Kristen Yelich is 0 for 3 today. And a ball driven to left center. Souza. He's got it! He's got it! It's a no-hitter! A rookie put into left field for defense makes a spectacular play to make Nationals history with his pitcher.